abusive relationship at ang problema nyo lang ay wala kayo pang permanent resident status dito or hindi pa kayo citizen at natatakot kayo magsumbong because of immigration implications or consequences, fret not because ngayong hapon sa Kababayan LA, pag-usapan po natin yung tinatawag na Violence Against Women Act, and that is today sa ating American Dream.
This American Dream segment is brought to you by Aquino & Lowe Law Firm, answering your immigration questions.
Attorney Richard Lowe from Aquino & Lowe Law Firm. Magandang hapon. Hello and welcome to Kababayan LA.
Hello, Janelle. How are you?
Let us talk about Violence Against Women Act. What is this? What does this entail?
Well, basically, the Violence Against Women Act is a way for someone who is here in the United States and being petitioned by a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to continue on with that petition without having to stay in that relationship. And it's basically focused on getting people out of domestic violence situations.
Has this been in place for a while now? Is this a new law, or how can people take advantage of it?
Well, VAWA, as it's commonly known, has been in place since 1994. It periodically comes up for review and that which will happen again in 2011. Basically, to take advantage of this, you just need to be able to show that you have been abused by a permanent resident or U.S. citizen, that you are the spouse, child, or parent of that person, and that you have resided with that person here in the United States.
Okay, let's talk about the abuse from a spouse. They must show that the marriage was entered into in good faith, and they must file a petition within 2 years of the termination of marriage. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, well, one of the things that you're going to have to show in the marriage is that you entered into the marriage for real reasons. In other words, you can't commit marriage fraud and then still take advantage of this law. However, the showings that you must meet are a lot less stringent than in other circumstances. So we're able to present a wide variety of evidence in order to substantiate the marriage.
How about for people that are, for a couple that's living together? You know, you're not married, but you live together. You've been together for maybe, living together for maybe 10, 15 years, and the wife has been abused, and she's not a legal permanent resident. Is there relief available to her?
Well, not under VAWA. VAWA really envisions that you are in a marital relationship in this case. However, there are other things that, such as U visas, which people that are in abusive relationships and aren't married can get. So it's important that if you are in an abusive relationship, you don't feel like you have to stay there in order to continue to try to perhaps get some benefits down the line. It's important to see an attorney and know your rights so you can get out of that relationship. Okay,
now, victims of abuse, there are different kinds of abuse. How does the immigration people define abuse? What is extreme cruelty, for example? Does it have to be physical? Can it be just verbal? And how do you prove psychological abuse or emotional abuse?
Well, that's an excellent question. And really, abuse takes various forms. And most people think of abuse as being physical abuse, and of course that is something that will be considered, but emotional abuse, verbal abuse, controlling behavior, all these kinds of abusive behaviors are acceptable as showing abuse in order to obtain this kind of relief. So it's important that people just don't think that they need to be in a physically abusive relationship to get relief. You can be in a verbally controlling relationship that will also get relief.
Who proves that, though? And what happens? Is there an investigation that happens? Say, for example, I'm a wife and I'm an abused wife. Maybe no physical, but maybe emotional. Maybe I'm being controlled, and then I just go to a lawyer. And what happens? I mean, how do I substantiate my claim?
Well, the government is allowed to take in a wide breadth of evidence in order to substantiate these kinds of claims. And oftentimes, people that are in violent relationships or abusive relationships don't have any real proof. I mean, they don't have photographs, especially if you're in an emotionally or verbally abusive relationship. There's really no proof other than your testimony. So the government will accept your credible and consistent testimony that's very detailed and that goes into what exactly happened in the relationship. They will accept that as enough to provide evidence for verbal or emotional abuse.
And meanwhile, Richard, during the investigation, you, even if you don't have permanent status here in the U.S., can remain here legally. You don't need to be deported, right?
Yes, what often happens is when we file a petition, which is a self-petition, then in the same time, we file an adjustment of status application just as if they were being petitioned by the abusive person, and they are allowed to get a work permit and remain in the United States until the resolution of that petition.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take usually? Does it take, 6 months, 3 years, 2 years?
Not long. Probably from start to finish, that is, the petition being approved, probably 4 to 6 months, depending upon the case. Sometimes we have to provide additional evidence. But for the most part, these cases can be resolved, and a person can get a green card, say, within about a year.
Okay. And I think the most important thing to remember here is if a person is being abused or in an abusive relationship, he or she doesn't need to stay in that relationship just to get a legal permanent status here in the U.S., correct?
That is absolutely correct, and if that's the only thing you get away from this today, and that's the most important thing, that you do not have to remain in an abusive relationship in order to continue to get benefits under the immigration law.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that with us today, and thank you for helping our Kababayans, Richard.
Thank you.
They do give free office consultation. We were flashing the number earlier on the screen, so call them now if you find yourself in that situation or you know anyone in that situation. Please call them because you will need their help. After American immigration or U.S. immigration, Canadian immigration naman po tayo. When we return on the show, don't go away.
The Wilsons left DSL for Time Warner Cable's high-speed internet.
Like, our DSL was, so slow.
Yeah, it, totally took forever.